I knew I wanted to work in construction. I put so much time and effort into gaining all of that experience. And then to be told that it wasn't enough.
Failure is never an option. There wasn't any world where I was going to let the deal fall through.
Angelina, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago.
Really?
Yes.
How did you guys meet?
We met on Bumble. We're a Bumble couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So I had recently moved to the island, heart of the COVID pandemic. The banks had sent everybody home to work. And I was like, might as well go look at the ocean instead of the inside of an apartment in Charlotte or whatever. I had gotten here. I didn't know what the radius was. I didn't know what dating apps really were. And so I put 20 miles as my radius. Lo and behold, 20 miles is Savannah, which for those unfamiliar with the area, Hilton Head is over an hour from Savannah most days. Ended up seeing her, used my one super swipe that I picked up for 18 cents or whatever it was. Yeah, I mean, best 18 cents I've ever spent. We hit it off for sure.
I would go on and off the dating apps. I'd been single for about 3 years, was very picky. And I normally would adjust my age. So it was my age or older. I didn't want to meet any guys younger. And we were hitting it off so well. I was actually down in Mexico with my friend and I was showing her his profile and I saw he was younger than me. And I was like, what? How did he get through? And I hadn't updated my age filter yet, but it was too late. I was done for.
So on your first date, are you guys talking about work on that first date?
Oh yeah, so this was the most interesting first date that I think I've ever heard of. So first, most people are like, you want to grab coffee, you want to go to dinner, you want to do something. So she says, let's go on a walking tour of Savannah. So for 2 and some odd hours, she's dragging me along the streets going, we built that, we touched that, somebody built this here, this architect did here. And I'm just standing there with my jaw on the floor going, I look at spreadsheets. And yeah, it was incredible, the knowledge that comes with someone that's almost been working for 2 decades, and I'm just crossing off my first because of the fact that she was working when she was a child, basically.
Right.
Yeah, awe-inspired. And after she just told me it was after we had talked so much and the chemistry was great over messaging. I was so surprised you're so quiet. I'm like, well, starstruck call me or something. So yeah, it was a good time.
So how did you end up in Savannah though?
Savannah was the first place I chose to work. I used to get sent around to the different projects, so I was on larger projects. So they'd send me where the work was. So I was really nowhere longer than about 6 months to a year. And my grandmother had just moved to Savannah, and so I wanted to be close to her. And so there was a company I was working for. They sent me down to Jacksonville to build a hospital before they'd let me come to Savannah, but then I got to be there, and I moved there in 2018.
Yeah, did you always want to be in commercial construction when you were younger?
Oh yeah. I grew up, so all my aunts and uncles, and they worked in construction. So we were all kind of a union family. And so I was always running around job sites when I was younger, or bothering the mechanics in the shop. I knew I wanted to work in construction.
What was your first job in construction?
I was a laborer. I was low man on the totem pole, the little gopher. So I would sweep the dust back into the trenches because we were doing sewer and water main construction for a long time. If they needed something from the trailer, because our trailer has all of our equipment in it. So if they needed a pump or a hose or something, they'd be like, hey kid, go get that. And so I'd run and get it for them because I was on site before I could drive. So
wow.
Yeah.
So what did your kind of trajectory look like in your career in construction?
The company I worked for, that's where my aunt also worked. They sort of figured out I was good with numbers. So that's where they had me kind of doing more kind of assistant project management type stuff. They sort of realized I was smart, so I could be utilized in that way. I was managing our trucking company by the end of it. So I was there monitoring their bills. So I would be out there. So I'd help on site. Like I was there to work if I needed to, but I'd also be taking all their tickets because the trucks would take dirt away and then come back with stone or clean fill dirt to fill the trench back up, because we had to subcontract that out. We couldn't do it internally. So then I'd get their bills and I'd check those bills against that. And that was kind of my foray into project management.
Where did it go from there?
From there, so that company ended up buying what you call is cured in place pipelining. I won't go too far into it because I'll be there for a long time if I do. But that company bought a cured in place pipelining company, which is a much more economical means of rehabbing sewers and water mains. And so I ended up running that company because we had smaller crews. So the larger company, I got separated from that I was like the director of operations, I think they called it, for that company.
So you went from labor to running operations of a company over how many years of experience did you have at that point?
That was like six years.
So what's that like, being in that position where you have all that responsibility at a fairly young age?
I was relieved. Are you kidding me? I'm very particular. I kind of more type A professionally, where I like things done a very particular way. So to have that sort of control and be able to do things the way I wanted to, I loved it. It was like the greatest thing. I worked at least 80 hours a week, but then wow. I loved getting into like I figured out how to track costs. That was something that this smaller outfit wasn't really doing. So like I built, Excel spreadsheets, just sort of taught myself how to really be a project manager and what it means to run a business. So I got to kind of figure it out on my own. And let my curiosities kind of take me where I wanted to go, because the work was getting done. So like from building a business perspective, it was really cool to get to, build all those spreadsheets for certain contracts. We had different like submittal information. So I got to like build that and learn how to organize things on the front end so you'd have a really successful project execution.
So throughout your career in construction, in commercial construction, did you have like a niche or specialty, or was it a wide variety of different projects that you had worked on?
So I went into building with the goal and the aspiration to touch every single kind of construction that there is, so that I always knew I wanted to go off on my own. I obviously wasn't sure how it was going to play out. I just knew that was going to happen one way or another. So I never wanted someone to bring me a set of drawings that I didn't know how to build. So I very intentionally stayed away from being a specialist and stayed a generalist for that reason. So even when I worked for a company that did warehousing. So 90% of our PMs and superintendents were building big boxes, which are very basic. Like I built one and I was like, you gotta help me out here, man, this is boring. So that was where I ended up growing a medical marijuana grow facility in upstate New York. That was fascinating. So it wasn't recreationally legal in New York when we built this building. And this was also when the banks weren't accepting money from these operations. And it was a publicly traded medical marijuana grow, like a medical marijuana company. So our first payment, which was like $500,000, came in a briefcase full of cash. I'm not joking. It was hilarious.
Wow. So you've worked on a bunch of different types of projects.
I built, it's actually cooler than building a hospital. So I put a bed tower on top of an existing operating emergency department. So we had built the emergency department 7 years ago and structurally had put steel members that would allow for this bed tower expansion, but we still had to cut into the roof, and it was the only trauma center in Jacksonville. So like we'd have to stop our tower crane to have helicopters land to take trauma patients, because we were the only one. We had this whole scaffolding system around the ER entrance so that people could go in and out. In this stairwell we built, we're placing a staircase next to an operating room. It was unbelievable. But then I built a sanctuary at the Cathedral Basilica in downtown Savannah. It's the Cathedral Basilica of St. John the Baptist. And that was one where we were literally gearing up to go to Portugal to like pick out the stone, like the block of stone that was going to go down in the basement. And got to work with like trades who did the vaulted plaster ceilings, and then the portraiture, like the actual that you would see in a church, like the actual painters that do that. So it was fascinating.
Wow.
So like all across the board, not a specialist.
And Donnie, I want to get you in here. You're a numbers man. What's your background?
Yeah. So went to college, ended up studying business. dabbled in marketing for a little bit, lived in South Beach in Florida, had some fun there with an experiential marketing company. Realized it really wasn't what I wanted to do, and then hopped into the banks. So got my first job in more of a rotational program, got to see how a lot of the different areas function, learned a lot around just kind of the building blocks, and learned a lot of what I don't want to do if I was to eventually run a company. My family is filled with entrepreneurs. So needless to say, that was always kind of in the back of my mind of how do I get to the end of that path. Worked my way up the ladder in the banks, spent some time in strategy groups, tech, like business intelligence, now payments and deposits for one of the larger banks. And really everything that it's taught me is how to take either budget the large organization, a large group of people, and try to coerce them into doing things that matter. And really, when we started talking about this possibility of buying a company, it was so exciting because coercing a small office versus trying to get thousands of people to work toward a common goal, very different. And it's much nicer to have a larger impact, so it was always very enticing.
Whose idea really was it to put this idea of buying a business in motion? And how did that conversation come about, and how did it go?
She had recently been released from her previous employer, and we were kind of at a crossroads because she was pregnant with the baby. We had drummed up a few ideas. She was interviewing with McKinsey, for example, and it kind of became an instance of either we can kind of jump in with another company in bed for the next 6-7 years and hope it pans out and go there, or my good buddy Ian, who's a great friend to us, is always scheming about how to get into the next thing or start a business or do this. And he had talked about like SBA loans. That kind of jump-started our interest, on top of the fact that where we lived, it's on a golf course, and we met a guy that happened to be selling a construction company. So it was really just an instance of everything aligning and kind of the universe saying, hey, like get on board or get off the train. So we took the dive in, immediately started contacting, and was referred to you, of course. And funny enough, the guy that referred us said, yeah, he's kind of a big name in the industry, well known. So of course I was like, oh gosh, does he want to talk to us? But I mean, obviously it panned out.
The business that you ultimately bought, you found through a guy at a golf course?
Playing a round of golf.
I was 8 months pregnant, I think. Or maybe 7 at that point.
No, 3.
No, I wasn't. It was like 7.
Wow.
Let's just call it 5.
Just call it 5, okay.
You hear about deals getting done on golf courses. I thought those times were over. I guess not.
And what's the name of the business?
RCH Construction.
So what did you like about it when you started, having those conversations and you're going through your due diligence?
Before we met and heard about Hugh wanting to sell his business, we had already been on like Biz Buy Sell on those websites looking. And there were 3 other contractors for sale that we were looking at when we met Hugh. Hugh and I really connected. That was the previous owner and builder, just on our kind of the moralities around building. Everyone kind of knows their contractor. That can be almost a dirty word. There's a lot of trust that's been broken down between builders and clients, which that is something that's that was dear to both of us, to sort of maintain that. Like, a huge thing for me was that he's never gone out of business. A lot of contractors, it's kind of the go bankrupt, spin up another LLC, go bankrupt, spin up another LLC, go down to Florida for a little bit, then come back, spin up another LLC. Everyone goes down to Florida.
So he had longevity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He survived 2008 without tanking, no lawsuits, and we just really take a lot of pride in what we do and appreciate doing things the right way. A huge thing for me was scheduling. So commercially versus residentially, one of my biggest fears going into residential was the lagging on job sites. I'd passed a lot of homes under construction that just sit there, and they sit there for months and nothing happens. And that would drive me nuts. As someone who, like, one of my favorite things is like schedule, really make things move faster, and how you can feather people in and have different subs chase each other out of the building, basically working. And Hugh is probably the only residential contractor around here that works the exact same way, where he has guys go in and there's guys on his site every day. So that was that spoke volumes to me, because the subs were used to doing that, because you're not really buying the book of business, you're buying their sub pool. Because that's the one thing I really can't get. I mean, we get calls every day for people who want, almost every day. Like, it's about every other day for new work. So there's tons of work around here. The subs are what I can't get, that quality workmanship. And so that was something that I knew the subs were going to be like, I wouldn't have to sort of force anyone to move faster. And we would all kind of be in alignment.
That's why it would be harder to start up from scratch to build that pool of subs.
Well, because they don't trust you either. So contractors are notorious, like GCs, for either having a site not ready for a sub. So they waste their morning going out to your project when, like a plumber, if your framer is not done with getting topped out on his roof, he can't start his rough-in. So they'll call you out and say, yeah, it's ready for you, when you don't actually know if it's ready or not. And then the sub wastes an entire morning then trying to go find somewhere else to go, or you don't pay. Like a big thing for us is we pay every week. So financially, we ensure that we have that ability to do that. And I think that's a big part of the reason why our guys are so motivated.
So tell me what the business does.
We build homes. So we do custom homes and large scale remodels. So we pretty much don't touch anything if it's under 6 figures.
And where's the business located?
Hilton Head Island. So the island looks like a shoe. So we always call it the toe or the heel or the arch. So toe to heel is 30 minutes. So I really like not being 30 minutes, more than 30 minutes away. Well, we're in the middle, so not more than 15 minutes away from the baby.
So what was it like going through the process of trying to buy a small business?
I, of course, in my ego, thought that because I had worked through a couple of acquisitions at a big bank, this must not be anything too terrible. And needless to say, that was not the case. I think you described it to me as take a mortgage and multiply it by 3. I definitely think that was an accurate description, and especially over just the time it takes, like going through basically a 90-day cycle, dealing with the opposite party, of course, and like the Hobuses who sold us the business, they had hired a broker, so interfacing with him for periods of time, and of course his job is to crack the whip, which he did very effectively. But it was an experience, a very good learning experience, and I think we hit almost every hoop you can.
Yeah, so the plan was that you were going to have your residential contractor's license at closing, which should have been no problem given all that experience we had talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. But the board denied that, which sent us into this other path where we had to pivot. But what was your reaction when you found out you were denied?
Oh, I was lit up about it. Because I did not realize too. So there was this emotional period because I didn't know that they brought everyone in. So I thought I was being singled out as a woman. And I was very upset about it, considering you send in your resume and 18 years of experience at now we're going on almost 19. I was pretty upset. Like I said, I wanted to know how to build everything. I put so much time and effort into gaining all of that experience. And then to be told that it wasn't enough and I still had to come in. And despite the fact that I had all of this experience and had done all of this work, with my resume were pictures of everything I had done too. So of things under construction, you can't really fake that. I was upset. And then I found out that they bring everyone in. And then I saw the 5 people in front of me get denied and I got approved to take the test. And so that actually,
some validation
there. That came full circle. So I was a bit reactive in the beginning. Again, I was still pregnant because that was when I was waking up. Because in your 3rd trimester, you can't sleep through the night. So I'd get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I'd study until about 6 when I could go back to sleep for a couple hours before I'd get up and work. Because by my 3rd trimester, I had found a job. So I was working remotely just for a structural engineering company. And so it did come full circle, but at first it was almost borderline heartbreaking. I really felt like I had put so much time and effort and been so cautious to make sure that I would really do this, be an exceptional executor of running a business, especially a construction company. There's so much you need to know to do that. But then, so when I left that, after they told me, he said that I'll never forget it too, because chills went through my body. The guy, they had asked me some questions, they were looking at my resume, and he goes, I think you'll do just fine, motion to approve. And then everyone immediately raised their hand and said second. I ran out of there and screamed in my car.
Out of happiness.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. No, I got a call and it was just and I was like, so it went well.
Well, because that was a rough morning too, because I hadn't looked at these papers that they had sent us about appearing. And so it was that morning that I saw that you can hire an attorney, you can bring witnesses. And I'm like frantically printing out my resume.
You were just gonna show up and just be like,
yeah, hey, ask me whatever you want to know. Like, I know all about construction.
Quiz me.
Yeah.
Ask me anything.
Quiz me.
No, and it was unbelievable. Like, I was just sitting there like, okay, well, if they kick me back, we can figure this out. We'll work out another way.
Was there a point where you thought the deal might not go through?
I did. He was the rock. I mean, I was very pregnant at this point too, so hormonally, there was a lot going on, but he would just be like, don't worry, I'm gonna figure it out. And I was like, okay. And we did. It worked out.
One of my earlier mentors, Seth, he really had a mantra of failure is never an option. And you may have heard me even say that to you at some point. When you go into these things and just the way that it all lined up and the opportunity that was there wasn't any world where I was going to let the deal fall through as long as the sellers would have us. And given the kind of emotional connection that Angelina had built, this was kind of a shoo-in.
So what has the transition been like going from commercial to residential?
It's been fun. So I'm very used to, like, I did mostly steel and concrete buildings, which is a front end endeavor. So you cannot cut a steel beam on site and then put it up in the building. You have to have all of this engineered, planned out. I mean, my steel gets ordered, like we start that process on a commercial building 6 months before the steel arrives on site. With wood, it's really fun. So from a structural perspective, like typically when I run into a problem on a commercial building, we have to stop. We have to have an engineer come out, take a look, and give us an approved method of proceeding. You rarely ever encounter that with residential because it's wood. You can cut it, you can create, a bigger beam. It's just like so much easier to work with. However, people are far more passionate residentially. So that has been one of I wouldn't necessarily call it a hurdle. It's just been an interesting point that's very easy to adapt to quickly. But when someone's building commercially, that's not their home. That's not where they live. It's, it's an investment. And typically you're dealing with entities, like you're not dealing with the actual person whose money it is. You have an investment, like a developer, there's all sorts of different people. You're very rarely are you with the person that's legitimately funding the project. And so when someone's building their home, I mean, I've had people come in, to projects where something wasn't exactly the way they wanted it and had full down panic attacks because they don't know how easy it is to fix it. So I've really learned, I had already learned very well how to explain things without technical jargon to anyone I'm working with on an ownership capacity. And so I've really gotten to flex that muscle a bit more with the homeowners and our different clients. It's been a lot of fun because I obviously never want to see any homeowner upset. The motto I've adopted is that, you're building a home. This is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be exciting. And so I tell all of our clients, if you're ever not feeling, excited or looking forward to it, it means something's going on. So let's take a look at what you're apprehensive about, what you might be a little anxious about, and let's make you feel better about it.
You guys knew you were pregnant with your first child going into this endeavor. How did that play into all your decision making?
The only decision it really changed was that we don't want any more work in Bluffton. So we always knew we wanted to have a business and have babies.
Because a business is considered a risky endeavor for some. So I was just curious if that kind of changed your mind, because McKinsey sounds like a cushy gig.
McKinsey, well, yeah, McKinsey would have been cushy, but I would have been traveling 4 days a week. I had done sort of my grind years already. I was kind of in a place where I worked 30 to 40 hours a week, just with my position and my level. And so I wasn't necessarily down for having a baby and being gone 4 days a week and working that much. And this was, when it came into our lap, being able to stay on the island, we just really didn't consider other options.
Do you like the lifestyle of owning your own business?
Oh my gosh, it's so nice. You're responsible to your employees, of course, but you very much get to, before I had a very flexible schedule. So in construction, it ebbs and flows. Some days you do, some weeks are 60 to 80, and then you can take your 10 to 20 weeks after when you're in a flow period. So I was already used to not being super accountable to anyone but myself as long as my work was getting done. It's a different level when you really don't have someone to report to, and there's just this extra ease that comes with it. just a bit more control over how your day-to-day goes.
So what are we looking at here?
This is a new 3,800 square foot home. So you can see over there, so that's what we call the ridge board that's going up, because that's going to be a roof that's not actually going to be a second story space. And then up here you can see the second story going up. And then the sheathing, which is all that plywood that goes around the exterior, that is part of the waterproofing system. So that is part of what helps keep the building watertight. So on top of that is where you'll see the building wrap. Like I'm sure you've seen buildings that have like the Tyvek around them. So that's our next step. And that's another portion of that waterproofing membrane. So water is probably the worst thing you can get in your house if you're a homeowner and you've had water in it, or even a renter waiting for, you know, your landlord to come in and do it. It is the absolute worst. My motto is no leaky buildings. And so that's why there's so many steps to that waterproofing element. Like your roof is involved in it, the face, and it goes all the way down to the footings. So we waterproof the face of the footings as well.
So was this a vacant lot when you got hired?
No, this was an existing home, which was still just as far off of these two houses. So the home that was here, we tore down, we demoed it out, and then we started building on top of it.
Wow.
And the market here in Hilton Head is very much turning into that cycle. We're seeing a lot of these homes that were built in the 60s, 70s, 80s that are now changing hands, and these lands that have really accrued value now are much more valuable once you put a newer building on them.
Yeah, we've seen lots that actually demoed, they're worth more. So like, you know, if you take your house down yourself, your lot, if you have one of the old homes, it's worth more.
How many projects like this do you have going at any one point in time?
Usually about 4. So in this stage, like Calandra, which is another project of ours, they're sheetrocked. So we've done all of our initial prime coat on it. So our team that framed that house then comes over to this one. So we have one framing team that we work with. He can always get more guys to go faster if we need to, but that crew kind of goes around, and that's what really sets our schedule, is that framing crew.
How long are you in this project for, time-wise?
We've been here for, honestly, only, I think like 2.5 weeks.
And you demoed it?
No. Okay. So the framers. Sorry, I was
Okay.
speaking to our framing crew. So we tore this down 2 months ago.
Okay.
So there's a whole demo permit process where you have to gather lots of information, like validate that you've disconnected the water and the electrical. So you have to get that documentation from the service providers, and then you pull that demo permit. But they do a pre-clear check. So until you pass that pre-clear inspection, you can't tear it down. So we were kind of hung up in that cycle for a little bit, and it took us a while. So after you put your foundation in, you can't pour it yet. So like all of that block down there is filled with mortar. You can't pour the mortar until you get a survey that validates your setbacks. So they won't let you put anything in until you send them like a survey. So it's a document that says, yes, they're not violating any of our regulations. This foundation is in compliance, because they've had too many people that would violate that, build a bigger house, and they wouldn't know until it was done.
Oof.
And you can't do anything about it then.
Yeah.
So that's where we started having to do that. And then once we're topped out, we have to do an elevation certificate too, because everyone pretty much, like 35 feet is as high as you can build on this island. So this building is built to 34 feet, 10 1/4 inch. That is pretty much what all of our homes get built to, because we need that play to stay under 35 feet during construction. But we have to come out, survey it, and before they'll let us do anything else, we send that in to say we did not go over 35 feet.
Sounds like there's a lot that goes into building a house, huh?
We've had a lot of contractors that don't write rules, so we've gotten more rules.
Gotcha.
The rules have gotten a little beefier, which is fine. I mean, you know, we live on this island, we're raising a family on this island, we're very protective of it. So we like the rules because they keep our island healthy and beautiful. So I don't mind complying whatsoever. I mean, throw them all at me if it's going to keep our island the way it is.
All right, well, would you mind kind of showing me around and letting us walk through?
All right, so everyone, of course, be extra careful. So yeah, right now we're in the main living space.
So this is the living room.
This is the kitchen and living room. So that's kind of like a little dining room and kitchen eating area. Out here is going to be a patio. And then we're putting a pool in right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you do the pool yourself, or you bring in a pool person for that?
We have a pool contractor. They actually operate under our license to pull their permits for the pool. So of course it's still all under us and regulated under us. But yeah, this was one where sometimes with these lots, we have to do the pool first because we don't have access. But with this one, we actually do. We had to like ensure that we have a lane to get the equipment back here to excavate and pour concrete. So for this one, we'll end up having to pump the concrete, which is a lot different than being able to like take it from a truck and place it on site like we normally would do, because pumping it, you end up having to do lots of different admixtures. And you also, so your aggregate, because concrete is like powdered Portland cement with aggregate and then water, and the aggregate has to be smooth river stone. You can't have coarse aggregate when you're pumping concrete, and so it actually costs a little bit more to pump it as well. And typically you'll put different admixtures in there to condition the concrete so that it flows through the pump easier, because concrete isn't the most workable substance. If you've seen it placed before, or if you've handled it, it's not as tameable as some of our other materials.
This may or may not come as a surprise, but I'm not quite often on construction sites.
Really?
In my office, behind a desk. Is it normal that the houses are built this way, or is it unique to the area in terms of all this plywood and 2x4s that I'm seeing?
Yeah, so there's definitely a couple different considerations. So we're on the coast, so we have much higher regulations from a moisture and wind perspective. We've got hurricanes that come here. So we have to do, like, so up north, you build a home, you don't anchor your roof to your foundations. Down here, we do that. So our roofs for wind uplift, when these hurricanes come and we have wind speeds up to 140 to 180 miles per hour, that wind can come in and up, and that's what we call uplift force. And so around this area, from a structural engineering perspective, we see much more, like that's what we call shear walls. So inside of this building, I think this is going to be our shear wall. And essentially what we do is we put plywood instead of before we put sheetrock up, and it's more of a structural wall. And that's also for wind, for like torsion, for torsion forces. So pretty much down here, we can't use wood unless it's for framing. So any finished wood, so like hardwood floors, we won't do that. Unless it's an engineered hardwood that will stand up to the humidity and salt that we get down here. And same on the exterior. So all of our siding is hardy plank, which is a cement fiberboard that does not contract or expand when we get our really humid summers where it gets up to like 110, 120 with the heat index. So that's, the whole building envelope is resistant to moisture, to humidity, and to salt. So
and this is a 2-story house?
Yes.
Where's the stairs?
We're not building the stairs yet. They're over here. So stairs structurally are typically one of the last things we put in. We're normally under roof before we do a staircase. So the stairs will go right here. And the reason for that, you see all of these bracing members we have flying around. These all come off. Like I said, they're typically they're hammered in, and they're for keeping everything straight. Like if you imagine you're setting a wall up, it needs to be braced because it's not braced from up there until we have the whole roof structure, everything set. So once we can take down all of these bracing members, then we have the ability to do some of our smaller cuts. So we want to get the big long members up first, and then these are the studs that go, and they prevent the studs from twisting in the middle. Anytime you have studs that go over 12 feet, you need to have these to support them and stabilize them. And then that one will go up like that too. So if you've seen them frame that way. So once we can get all of these bracing members down, because the main structure is up, that's when we start going in to do the smaller things. Because if you can imagine, someone doesn't really want to build a staircase ducking and crouching all around here because of how many cuts they have to make.
Right.
This is our hurricane strapping. This is part of that. So those go up there to keep that held down. This keeps all of this held down all the way down to the foundation that's also strapped to it. We have 2 methods of adhering the building to the foundation. So you can do threaded rod, which is where we physically set like a J-bolt into the foundation that screws in and anchors to the sill plate, or we do these straps. And most contractors like the threaded rod instead of the strapping because it's much faster. But the strapping is just a bit more time consuming. Some of the more old school builders still like strapping their foundations. So these are engineered. So You can see we have different members all on this site. This is engineered I-beams. And essentially the deal with these is we can't cut these. So this is kind of like steel. So all of our 2x4s, well, any 2x, so we have 2x6s, like this is a 2x6 house, not a 2x4 house. We can cut any of those as much as we want to fit all of this in. These are engineered, and they get engineered before they get ordered because they have to be built to their lengths and they have to be designed for the building. So those come and then get put up.
I'm just curious, what's the difference between a 2x4 and a 2x6 in terms of, like you said, this is a 2x6 house. Why is that?
It's because of our wind requirements, it creates a sturdier, more so from a structural engineering capacity, 2x6s can carry a heavier load and they're more stable structurally. So the 2x4s around here, down here, when we have these larger structural requirements, it's kind of similar to being in like a seismic zone. So like if you're building in San Francisco, you're in seismic zone D, which is the highest one we have because of all of their earthquakes. So you have a lot more requirements from a structural perspective because of the seismic activity. I'm sure they only do 2x6 construction. We're kind of in that same thing where we're not like out in the plains where we just get some kind of heavier breezes. We're in hurricane zone. So we really need our buildings to stand up to those.
Do you guys get any flooding around here?
Yeah, so flood on the island is 13 feet. That is why you see, so right now we are standing 13 feet above sea level. So essentially, yeah. So there are little pockets on the island where you actually are at 13 feet, where your house can be a slab on grade, which saves you a third to a half of your building cost for the foundation system alone, because we don't have to go up with all these masonry piers. So the entire perimeter, you see how that block, it goes all around the perimeter of this home. And then under certain points, like right there, there is a concrete pier, like a masonry pier that supports that column right there. When you're talking about pouring a concrete slab just like that, it's much easier for our guys to go in and pour a slab versus do all of this labor that's involved in placing the block. And so anytime you're in a home that was built within the last 10 years and it's elevated like this, whatever you're standing at is 13 feet above sea level. And that's because of our storm surge. So when we get the hurricanes, we've never seen storm surge go, I think it was above 10 feet. And so we have that little buffer.
So how's it been going since you bought the business? What are some of the more memorable moments since taking over?
It's been going great, like too great. You know, you kind of wonder what's gonna go wrong next. Definitely a memorable moment. I did pass my builder test, which was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. So PSI, who's the exam holder, that's who they contract out, the state does, to do these tests. And they send you, when you sign up, they say, go, here's your practice test. Like, if you want to buy these, and you're like, yeah, okay, let's do that. I was getting 100% on these practice tests. Like, while I was pregnant and I went back and I did them before I took it again, I went up there to take my test. Not a single one of those questions were on that test. And I'm looking and I didn't even understand most of the questions because they're so bizarre. Like, they're like really weird mechanical and electrical questions. And I was like, okay then. And so, I mean, I didn't pass it. I actually got a 50%, which I was proud of myself for, because I was able to kind of figure, like, you know, a lot of them out just from my experience, but a lot of them were not, like, did not at all align with my experience. And so then, anyway, we went through, I spent probably about 40 hours in total there's like 7 different books. So like my book stack was probably that big between all of the different ones, because it's an open book test. And so between highlighting, tabbing, doing different courses, I spent probably 40 hours, and then I did pass my test. So. All
right, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm very close. Tomorrow I actually have one more in the business and law, which is a lot easier. I've done my studying for that. But yeah, I'm pretty much fully licensed, just about to be. And then we brought in some of our own projects. So when we first started, Hugh had been talking to this developer who wanted to do, so these are the 5 houses. There's 5 houses all next to each other. He introduced that developer to me because I had to close the deal because I was the one who would be building these houses. So closing him when we got his deposit, because we take a deposit, that's how we know someone's actually going to sign up. When we got his deposit, that was like a huge smile for me because I was waiting for it not to pan out. And we were actually in a position where we didn't, like all of the work we had would have kept us whole, but we needed more work to be profitable. And so these houses were crazy, like a very large amount of profit because we do renovations and new homes, and these are 5 new homes. So that was a big one. And then a couple days ago, I landed another new home build, which is going right after it. And then we've had 2 remodels sign up with me exclusively too. So those have all been like a lot of fun. Like it's just really cool. Like when someone, you know, it's actually me now. It's not me working for a company, and to have someone say, yeah, I think you can build a house. I trust you. It matters more than I thought it would. I would never really consider the anxiety that could kind of come with all of these new client meetings and, you know, is this going to go well? Do I want them? Do they want me? And so it's been a lot of fun. I've definitely had some conquering moments, I think, with getting people signed up.
So any curveballs? Has anything unexpected happened since you've transitioned the business?
Plenty.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's been like a million little ones.
Yeah, like when you go in, of course, you have your 90-day plan, whatever it is, best intentions, and as you get in, you have to kind of move with it. So, for example, me coming from the banks, I really have a inclination to love to put into effect like different software systems, whatever can make it better. Doing that can sometimes cause problems. I was personally responsible for our books being all sorts of messed up for quite a few weeks while I got some things worked out. And that of course was fun, but learning experience. Next time I won't do some of the kind of blunders that I did.
Well, it sounds like overall it's gone very well for you guys.
Yeah, I just remembered we did get our business license canceled. I forgot about that. That was one of the more notable curveballs. I was sitting in the office with Erin. She's kind of our right-hand girl. She's awesome. We love her. She'd been working there for about 5 years, and she's really been just instrumental for us just in the transition period. But she was on the phone with the permitting because of course we have a ton of things in the permit office right now. And she said, they canceled their business license. And I was like, how did this happen? And she said, well, I sent in that form that he was filling out because we needed to. Essentially, we sent in a form a bit too early because I can't apply for my own business license until I have that builder's license. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go down to this office. I'll be right back. Don't worry about anything right now, because obviously you have to close if you don't have a business license. Like that is a very big deal. And so I went down there, and luckily I had forged a relationship with a lot of people there just through the permit process, like just trying to be, you know, very respectful and make sure I follow all the rules with these permit submissions. And so they were able to help me out, and we got it reestablished so that I could get it put back in place. But when Erin was like, she said there's nothing we can do. Do I have to call have everyone? I was like, no, we're gonna be calm and we're gonna go to the office and we're gonna get it figured out. It's gonna be fine. And it was, but there's definitely stuff comes up. Like as a business owner, you're the end of the line, you know? So you have to make sure you take care of everything. It's not like that's not my job thing anymore.
Well, that's a lot of responsibility and you know that you guys have taken on. And I'm just curious, what is driving you to do all of this?
We've always wanted the independence that comes with being a business owner, but for me, and well, for both of us, actually very much so, we wanted to have more of an influence on improving people's lives. Like what Donnie was saying with how you get to see your impact far greater and faster in small business versus like with him, when he's in these gigantic organizations, you don't get to see that. Like we just had our bonus time this week, which is one of my favorite things. So we got to, you know, announce what our raises and bonus distributions were going to be. And you get to see like the real impacts you're having. You get to see where that money that you know, give your employees goes. And you get to change their lives. Like you get to really make sure, you know, I love taking care of people. Like all of our people were very much protective of kind of our team. We want to treat people very well so that they're incentivized to, you know, really want to work with us and have a great career with us. So that's been really cool, is to kind of get to see the excitement and get to see the actual impact you're having with all these people that work with you.
And also just from like a broader perspective, the previous owners were hugely involved with different charities in the area. And being able to have kind of the incentives provided to small businesses to say, I'm going to do these sizable donations and really sway the impact an organization can have on the immediate area. You almost become ingrained in a small community like this island. There's not that many locals. So when you're able to have an impact, it spreads much wider than you'd be able to as an individual in really many capacities.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.